Good morning, or depending on when you're listening to this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross and I was taught how to voice for radio, so I've made some videos. This is from Newport Regionals, the very first regionals in the UK just 3 days after Breakthrough was made legal. So these are the first really big tournaments around where the Breakthrough, the new set, will be legal. So you can learn about the new cards, the new decks, and the new strategies by watching these videos. I should thank the lovely Deborah Richards, who not only put on this tournament, but she let me record and she made it really easy for me to do so at the same time. So thank you very much to her. We are in the format X and Y to Ancient Origins, and we are playing 6 rounds of 50-minute best of 3. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so on the left we have got Nitish the Lube, and he is going to be playing Fighting Bats, and on the right we have Tamal Cameron. We saw him a couple of rounds ago against the lovely Ollie Fennelly, and indeed we've seen him a few times on these streams throughout the last couple of years. He is going to be playing Yveltal Vespiquen Bats, not unlike the deck that I piloted at this particular tournament, but it's a very unusual list. We've got a 1-1 Octillery, a 1-1 Ariados, a 1-1 Milotic. Tamal, it went a bit overboard, but remember that with these Vespiquen decks, you just want to play a whole bunch of Pokemon to power up Vespiquen's Be Revenge attack, which does more damage for every Pokemon in the discard, so you might as well put some Pokemon in. So Nitish starts off with a couple of Lucarios, and he gets a Zubat right away. And he's going to use Corinna, and he's going to get a Hawlucha, and I would imagine maybe some, I can't see what that is it an Ultra Ball? I mean, quite often you'll see the Bats players or Lucario Bats players, they'll play a Corinna and they'll get an Ultra Ball or something along those lines too. Oh no, it's a VS Seeker, so that he can have something to go for next turn. So the VS Seeker there, he clearly doesn't have a supporter, so the theory is, well, I don't have a supporter, so I'll grab a VS Seeker, at least I'll be able to use a Corinna next turn. It's not ideal, but it's better than not having a supporter next turn. Obviously, if we were playing an expanded, Nitish would have gone and got something like a computer search, or maybe in certain decks a random receiver. The only other thing he could have gone for was a trainer's mail, and there's no guarantee that's going to hit. So he does get a strong energy on his Lucario EX, but as it's the first turn of the game, he cannot attack, so he has to pass. He would like more than one Zubat on the field, but like we've said, he's not got a great hand, and the only alternative was getting the Ultra Ball instead of the VS Seeker, but that could have left him with very little next turn. So Tamal is playing a Battle Compressor straight away. He's going to want to start dumping Pokemon in his discard pile, powering up, like I said, Vespiquen's Be Revenge attack. For 1 double colourless energy, it does 20 plus 10 for each Pokemon in the discard pile. And he gets rid of a Feebas, and he gets rid of an Octillery, basically saying, I'm not using my 1-1 Milotic, I'm not using my 1-1 Octillery, I'm okay with this. And we see another Battle Compressor come down. Now we also got rid of a Dark Energy. Now Tamal plays a very low Dark Energy count. I believe it's only 4. So what he's not wanting to do in a huge amount of games, and there comes the Remoraid to pair with the Octillery. And there comes another Yveltal. Often you don't want to, get rid of one of your 4 dark because you need your dark to attack, and if you start discarding them, you're less likely to draw into them with something like a Juniper. So it's likely that he knows where he's going to be getting his dark energy from to attack this turn. Now you see him dumping a couple of Yveltals. Quite frankly, Yveltal's not going to win him this game. His Bats are going to be useful to take down Lucario, and his Vespiquen is going to be useful if he can get enough Pokemon in the discard pile to start doing a whole bunch of damage. There goes an Unknown, and as predicted, he does have a Dark in hand. Remember that Yveltal's... Oh, and then we see a Sycamore getting rid of it. So that's a lot of Pokemon in the discard turn 1. Now that he's got a Dark on the Yveltal, he's actually in a position to attach with Yveltal's Oblivion Wing, which attaches a basic energy from the discard pile. So that's actually really, really useful having the Dark in there. He gets 1 Zubat down, he'd like some more. He uses Unknown's ability, allows you to just discard it. And he hit a DCE, which is not useful this particular turn. He's actually got 2 of those in his hand. And it doesn't look like he's got another Zubat or a way to go and get one. So not the ideal first turn, but he's got a whole bunch of Pokemon in his discard. What Tamal really wants to do this game, and he does have he has a Shaman, but it doesn't look like he's going to be able to get rid of enough cards to make the Shaman really worthwhile. So he just uses the Oblivion Wing, does 30, and attaches to the Zubat. Remember that when that Zubat becomes a Crobat, it's going to be doing quite a lot of damage because that Lucario is weak to Psychic. Now, we do see an Ultra Ball coming down here, which is quite useful. I didn't see what he discarded, though. And there he's going to get a Shaman. Obviously, he wants a Zubat, but it's not ideal. Now, what he could have done last turn was go Ultra Ball for the... he could have gone Ultra Ball for the Shaman, but he had a bunch of stuff in his hand he didn't want to play, like the Ultra Ball, like the Energy. Oh, and he's got a Sycamore in hand as well there. Which is incredibly useful. So he actually dumped the VS Seeker with what he just did. Oh, and that's a lovely draw. He's got the level ball to get another... he's got a Golbat, and he's actually, that level ball's not going to do much for him because he's got a full bench at this stage. Now, his best plan here would actually be to not play the Sycamore. He's going to be best off just playing the Lysandra, bringing up and KOing the Zubat. He'll get a prize from that. Lucario's second attack does 6. There we go. He can actually use his first or his second attack, but the second attack allows him to draw until he's got 6 in his hand. And now this... Oh, I was going to say he can use his level ball to grab a second Golbat, but it looks like he has 2 Golbats in hand as it is. So really good from Nitish there. Very good play. A lot of players might have been tempted, as we see Tamal play a Sycamore, to play Sycamore in that situation, but he didn't need any more cards. He had the attack with Lucario, he had the KO using Lysandra, and by using the Lysandra, he guarantees that Tamal isn't going to be able to drop a Golbat and do 2 damage to one of his Pokemon. So a really, really heads-up play from Nitish there. So we do see an Ultra Ball coming down, getting rid of a Crobat and a VS Seeker for a Combee. Now this is a problem I had when I played Nitish in this particular tournament. And actually I played 2 Lucario Bats with a similar deck. Combee has low HP and Tamal's not playing Forest of Giant Plants, which will allow him to evolve his grass Pokemon straight away. That means that if Nitish has got a Golbat and a Crobat in hand, he can drop 5 damage counters onto a Combee, he can get the KO. Which is, actually what he could do here. He could even just drop a Crobat, and then snipe the Combee for 30, and use a Golbat to do 20 to a different Combee. Or indeed do 30 with the Crobat. So he could KO one of those Crobats and leave the other with 10 HP remaining. You could argue that he shouldn't have benched Hawlucha in an earlier turn. He could then have 3 Zubats down and actually KO 2 Combees in this situation. But he needed to empty his hand for the Shaman, and you can't rely on, I'm going to have 3 Zubats out, my opponent's going to have 2 Combees on the bench. I'm not saying he's wrong for not doing that play. But I am saying, had he not benched the Hawlucha, he could have used the Ultra Ball to have 3 Zubats down here. And I believe, he would have had to snipe with a Crobat, but he could actually have got the KO on both the Combees. Dropping a Golbat, 2 Golbats on what would have been 2 Zubats on the bench, and then dropping a Crobat and sniping to get the KO on the second. I hope that made sense. It was a fairly convoluted play, and he can't do it anyway, but there we go. So we do see an Ultra Ball coming down there. Presumably, I think he got a Crobat off of that. He's just ditched another Hawlucha and a Golbat. There does come a point with these Bats decks where you've just got enough on the bench and you have to start discarding the others. So we do see a Combee going down. We do see a prize from Nitish. But this kind of opens the door in a way. Oh, unless he's got a... if he's got a VS Seeker... and he has. He's already played he already played the Corinna to get the Ultra Ball. Would have been lovely if he could have Lysandra'd and killed that Combee this turn. But unfortunately, that's not something he's going to be able to do. Which is disappointing, but it's not the end of the world. Now, the question is, does he have an energy? Because if he does have an energy, there's no point attaching it. If he had either a strong energy or a regular energy with a muscle band fighting stadium, he'd be able to do 120 and he would get the KO here. As it is, attaching another energy, he'll do 100 base, plus 20 for the strong energy, minus 20 for the resistance, which will leave the Yveltal on, it would leave him on 10 damage. There is an argument to do that and get the KO with the Crobat, but here he's had a nice conservative play. He's let himself, he's going for the 2-hit KO on the Yveltal, and he's got an energy on the benched Lucario. So that means that Tamao isn't going to be able to KO the active Lucario and get rid of free energy, which would be all of Nitish's energy. So a little conservative play there from Nitish, but I think it's a pretty good play. So he gets another Combi down. Now, if you look at Nitish's side of the board, there can only be a Crobat coming down next turn. No Golbats, one Crobat. That doesn't mean Nitish can't KO the Combi. It means that in order to KO, he's going to have to drop a Crobat and then snipe with the Crobat. And that's, given the game state, it's not the end of the world. Now, Tamao's got a whole bunch of Pokemon in his discard. He's going to be looking to see how much damage can I do. Now, like I've said, that Vespiquen does 20 base, which means if he's got 10 Pokemon in the discard, he will be doing 120 damage, and that will be enough to get the KO, and indeed even up the prizes. The problem with this matchup for Tamao is that Nitish is sitting there just poking away at these low HP Pokemon, using Bats, using Lucario. And Tamao really needs a few turns to get going with either his Bats or his Vespiquen. And when he gets going, the matchup is not too bad for Tamao. The problem is that he's not getting those turns to get going. Nitish is just getting rid of his low HP Pokemon long before he can actually get anything going. And that's a big problem here. Now, a nice move from Tamao there. You notice, and there goes the Fighting Stadium. When he used Oblivion Wing there to do 30 damage to the Lucario. Oh, and Lysandre comes down here pulling up the Shaman. That second attack is now going to do 140. Plus 20 for the Stadium is 160. Minus 20 for the Resistance is 140, which is more than enough to destroy that 110 HP Shaman. Now, what Tamao did there, well, I was going to say, he put an energy on his Combi. So there was a Vespiquen with no energy or a Combi with 1 energy. Meaning Nitish either KOs a Combi with energy, Tamao just needs a Vespiquen, just needs an energy, or he KOs the Combi with the energy, and Tamao needs a Vespiquen and any energy. So he's heightening the odds of being able to get the play. Whereas if you had a Vespiquen with energy and a Combi without, clearly Nitish can just try and KO the Vespiquen with the energy. Now this is the money turn for Tamao. Now he's going to be able to get the KO. There must be 7 Pokemon in the discard at this stage. So he's going to get the KO here, and he's going to leave he's going to leave Nitish with 2 prizes remaining, but he hasn't got any big attackers left. However, remember that a Hawlucha can KO a Shaman for 1 energy. If he's got strong energy and a Muscle Band and a Lysandre, he can actually get the KO on that Shaman right now with Hawlucha and win the game. Oh, now all he needs is just an energy and a Lysandre, and he's got the win. Because now Shaman's got 80 HP left. Hawlucha hits for 60, which goes up to 80 with the Fighting Stadium. And there is and the ability of Hawlucha says that he's not affected his attacks anyway, or the damage from his attacks, if I want to be really pedantic, which I do, is not affected by weakness or resistance on the defending Pokemon. Which means I was a terrible man when I donked Andrea Siolin's Thunderous last season with a Hawlucha, and then realised days later that wouldn't have got the KO because he doesn't hit the Thunderous for weakness. So sorry, Andrea, I do feel like a terrible person. I don't know if you're watching this, you may well not be, but if you are, Andrea, I do apologise. I feel shame. There's and that Enhanced Hammer's going to be handy if he doesn't get the KO this turn. Get rid of the DCE. Now, Vespiquen does have free retreat, and the Vespiquen on the bench has got 1 energy attached, so it's not going to be too much bother for Tamal to get an attack next turn, but it's inconvenient if nothing else. He's got 2 DCEs gone, and actually, it doesn't look like Tamal's got an energy at the moment, so unless he gets an energy, he can't use B Revenge with the Vespiquen. Now, this is going to be an interesting turn. Tamal really wants there's another energy on the Lucario. Now, if Nitish doesn't get a KO this turn, and Tamal can pick up the Shaman next turn using an AZ, which just allows you to pick up a Pokemon on your side of the field, discarding all cards attached to it, then Tamal could... I mean, there's a lot to ask for here. Actually, no. I'm just trying to work out how Tamal wins this game, and I'm thinking, well, he needs to use an... Okay, now we're talking. If Tamal can get the KO on the Lucario, and pick up the Shaman, and have a Lysandre for the following turn, he might have the win here. Vespiquen might be able to KO the Lucario, going down to 2 prizes. He needs to pick off the Shaman, guaranteeing that Nitish cannot get the 2 prize KO next turn, which means that just with 1 Lysandre, Tamal would be able to pick up the Shaman and get the KO next turn. And as he didn't get the KO, honestly, I would have liked to have seen Nitish leave the Crobat active last turn and just try sniping. The reason is, Tamal's only got a twin, so it's a moot point. But had Nitish left the Crobat active, what he would have been able to do is force Tamal to either not get an EX KO or not pick up the Shaman, meaning either Tamal can't win in 2 turns or Nitish can win the following turn. So even that Lucario up did open the door for Tamal a little bit, because it's allowed Tamal to potentially get a KO this turn and next turn. Problem is, we know that Nitish has got a VS Seeker in his hand, and if he's got 1 energy, he can just VS Seeker for Lysandre, pull up the Shaman, and get the KO. And it will be as simple as that. Whereas had Tamal been able to use an AZ this turn while KOing the Lucario, then he would have put Nitish in the position where Nitish would have had to get the Shaman off the board, or Tamal could have used a Lysandre for a KO. It's probably a moot point at this stage, but as Nitish wasn't getting a KO this turn, I think the prudent play very much for Nitish would have been to leave the Crobat in the active and just wait, because he only needs 2 prizes here. So the prudent thing for Nitish to do would have been to just leave the Crobat in the active and just try and get the Lysandre KO on the Shaman the following turn. Now you might say, yeah, but Tamal could have picked up the Shaman. He could, but we saw that Nitish didn't get a KO last turn anyway, so, that's one reason why you would potentially want to. But that's all a moot point here. Tamal didn't have an AZ, and that has really helped out Nitish, because like I've said, Tamal needed an AZ that turn as he plays a Super Rod, putting 2 Pokemon and 1 energy back into his deck. Tamal needed an AZ to get the Shaman off the side of the field. Tamal knows that all Nitish needs is an energy Lysandre to get the win. And right now, it looks a lot... Well, he's got the VS Seeker in hand. Now, he will need an energy. He doesn't have the win yet, but it doesn't look like it's going to take much. And did Tamal play a Super Rod there to stop himself decking out? I think he did, I think he played a Super Rod to put 3 cards back in his deck so that he could play that Sycamore without risk of decking out and losing, which is it's a funky little play, quite frankly. It's a nice little play. So we see 5, 10, is that 15? Well, there's at least 16 Pokemon in the discard now. Add the 20 base damage for B Revenge. That's 180 damage. So straight away, we know that Tamal's got the KO here. He's got the energy, and he put that back with the Super Rod, which was also a good cause. But this could all be for naught if Nitish has an energy. He has got an energy and he has got a VS Seeker, so the game is over. He's going to put the energy on the Hawlucha. He's going to VS Seeker for the Lysandre to pull up the Shaman, KO the Shaman with the Hawlucha, and that will be the game, ladies and gentlemen. Not entirely sure why he hasn't done so yet. even bearing in mind, I'm pretty sure he's got 2 prizes left. Even if Hawlucha's ability was turned off, he'd still be hitting for 80 damage here and get the KO. There we go, he's got it. Nitish takes game 1, and because I recorded them in 2 separate files, there's going to be a slight little pause here, or at least a little kind of inconsistency while we head off to game 2. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so we're rolling into game 2 here, and, well, I think we probably laid it out quite nicely in the previous game. Nitish needs to try getting his early cheap KOs onto Mal's low HP basics, and to be fair, his low HP stage 1s as well, using a combination of Bats and Lucario. Mal needs to get his Bats out nice and fast, and he needs to try and make sure that he gets his Vespiquen powered up quickly. Now, the one advantage for him going first here is that he can put potentially multiple Combees down, and then there is absolutely no possibility Nitish can KO them next turn. Now, he can play, one Lysandre to KO one Combee on turn 1, but that really is it. Which means Tamal's going to get a chance to evolve them up before Nitish can start taking them out with his Bats. Now, we do see a Battle Compressor come down. Tamal's gotten rid of a Sycamore, so we can safely assume there's a VS Seeker in his hat. He's doing that thing that people do ever so often of using a Battle Compressor to discard a supporter so they can reuse it using VS Seeker. Nice and simple. He's also got rid of a couple of Yveltals because, like we saw, it's not the end of the world whether he has them or not for this game. Now, he's got a Remoraid down that evolves into Octillery. Octillery has an ability that allows you to draw until you have 5 cards in your hand. So it's going to give some early game consistency for him. Here's one of the problems with Tamal going first in this game, though. Nitish is going to have... Actually, to be honest, it doesn't really matter. Either way, Tamal really needs a turn to evolve before he can attack, unless he's using Baby Yveltal. Nitish, on the other hand, he just needs 1 energy on a Lucario, and off he goes. So, excuse me, there's a bit of hiccuping going on. I will make it as unobtrusive as possible, I hope. Or it'll just become hilarious and annoying, which, could be worse. And he's already got a KO here. Zubat's got 50 HP. Lucario does 30 damage, plus 20 for the strong energy. And yes, Zubat is resistant, but Lucario's first attack goes through resistance. So, oh, no, that one was quite loud. So, Nitish here is going to get the KO on the Zubat and go 1-up. Now, he plays a Corina there to get an Ultra Ball and a Hawlucha, and he's going to use that Ultra Ball to go and grab himself a Shaman. Which is, well, I assume he's going to get the Shaman anyway. He has got the Shaman, yes. And he's going to draw 5 cards. Remember, Shaman's setup ability allows you to draw until you've got 6 in your hand. And he gets another level ball there, which we can use to get a second Zubat. And we saw in the previous game how much of an advantage getting those Zubats down really gives you. Now, one thing to mention from Tamal's point of view here is that he not only needs his Bats to do the damage with the ability, like every Bats deck, but Lucario's weak to Psychic, which means potentially hitting for 60 damage for 1 energy, or 100 with a Muscle Band, but I believe Tamal's not playing any Muscle Band in this particular build. So he benches an Unknown and immediately uses the ability Farewell Letter to draw a card. He gets another Zubat down. He evolves up to Vespiquen. Oh, and this is not ideal. He has to use Skill Dive to do 10 damage, double to 20 because of the weakness. But we know that Nitish has got the KO. He had a KO on Zubat last turn. So we know he's got the KO on Zubat this turn. And we see 20 damage coming down on that Remoraid there. So we have a Fighting Stadium as well. Not terribly relevant at the moment. But remember that Fighting Stadium can be used to get KOs on things like a Shaman. Now, you saw him considering a second energy. A second energy does nothing on a Lucario for the moment, because Lucario's second attack does 60. No, sorry, it does do something. I'm being an idiot. it does 60, and then essentially the extra damage between the strong energy and the resistance just cancel out. The thing is, he's got a KO without using that. Oh, and we see a Golbat coming down here to do another 20 damage somewhere. Now, he doesn't need... it's nice to spread your energy around in this game, because then you've got options. If Tamao does go off like crazy next turn and get a KO with the Vespiquen, unlikely it seems, but possible, Nitish will still have an energy on the board, and we know he's got the KO with the Lucario anyway. Oh, he has got a muscle band there. He's thinking about it. Now, I don't know if Tamao's playing 1 Xerosic or not in his deck. I can't remember. I know he's not playing Megaphone, so it's unlikely that is going to go away. And to be honest, if Tamao was going to play a Xerosic to get rid of a special energy or a tool, he'd probably get rid of the strong energy. So Tamao here. Now, if he gets a Golbat, he can do 20 damage, putting Lucario down to 140, meaning Tamao will need 12 Pokemon in the discard pile to get the KO. That's still quite an ask, but it's doable. Now, the other thing to bear in mind here is that Lucario on the bench, with one more energy, will only be doing 80, 60 damage plus 20 for the muscle band, so he'd need a strong energy to get the KO on the Vespiquen. But having said that, Tamao has passed. This game is already going downhill, and it's going downhill very, very fast indeed. There's really he's going to be 3 prizes down. That Remoraid is going down this turn, which means over the first few turns of the game, Nitish has been able to take 3 prizes on Tamao's low HP basics, and Tamao has been able to do 40 damage to 180 HP EX. Now that, ladies and gentlemen, is not a recipe for winning this matchup. We saw this in the previous game. What Tamao needs to do is he needs to be using his bats very aggressively, multiple Golbats, multiple Crobats, and what he wants to do is basically attack with Vespiquen, KO in the EXs, and use the bats to soften up Lucario while the Vespiquen take him out. And then when you've used your bats, you're a few turns in, you've got more Pokemon in the discard, and then you just get the KOs, or even get the KOs on Shaman late game using, Lysandras and VS Seekers. Certainly, this is not what he had in mind. Now, Feebas has 30 HP, which means if there is a Crobat or an Ultra Ball for Nitish this turn, he's going to get the KO on that bench Feebas, and he's going to get a KO with the Lucario as well. Doesn't look like he's got it. I do apologise about the hiccups. You might be thinking, why don't you just wait until the hiccups are gone? I have had very little time to record these games lately. So, yeah, I'm afraid it's got to be done when it's got to be done. Now, interestingly there, Nitish could have played a massive Juniper, or Sycamore as it is nowadays, to search for the Crobat. He chose not to. Now, had he hit the Crobat, he gets the KO as he did on the Golbat. He also gets the KO on the Feebas using his Crobat, and then Tamao's basically got nothing. As it is, Tamao has been able to... We see an Ultra Ball coming down for an unknown there. As it is, Tamao has been able to get the... He's been able to get the Milotic, use his ability to recover 1 card from the discard pile to his hand. He chose a Sycamore to get himself going. He needs a Combee down. He needs to get a Combee this turn. And he needs a DCE. Now, if he can get a DCE, and he can get the KO, and, oh my goodness, it's just Shaman City right here. Just drawing, Shaman for 1 to get a Shaman. For 1, it's just Shaman's coming at your face. He needs a DC. Oh, he's got the Combee and a full bench. But now he gets rid of the unknown. Is it a DC? He hasn't got the DCE here. He needed the DCE. Now, there is a possibility, and it's a bit of a long shot, but there is and here all he's going to be able to do is use Intelligence Gathering for 10, or just, for 10 damage or give away the Milotic. This is going to put Nitish down to 1 prize, which, if he's got a Crobat, he uses a Crobat to put 30 on the Combee here, KOs the Milotic with the Lucario, and then he doesn't even need a Lysandre to finish out the game. He can just snipe twice with a Crobat onto that Combee. Or indeed, he can this turn evolve to Crobat, snipe the Combee, and then just kill something else next turn. I don't think there's any way back for Tamao here. I mean, even the previous turn, he was hoping he can get a KO with the Vespiquen and then get 3 KOs in a row with on EXs, while hoping that it never draws into a VS Seeker or a Lysandre to take out a Shaman, which I don't think was ever going to happen. So unfortunately, I don't really see any way back for Tamao in this particular game. Now he's got another energy there. That active Lucario is currently only hitting for 50, and Milotic does have 110 HP. So even if he uses a second attack here, he's only going to be doing 100. However, that's not the end of the world. In fact, the ideal for Nitish here, and it's less of an issue because of how far ahead he is, but the ideal for Nitish here is Tamao is stuck with a Milotic in the active. He can't use energy to retreat. He needs to get energy for Vespiquen. And then next turn, Nitish drops down a Crobat, uses the ability to do 30 to the active Milotic to KO it. Excuse me. Then Tamao has to put something from his bench into the active, and Nitish just kills it. And he wins the game next turn. So that's the ideal for Nitish here. Although I've been talking every turn about if he gets the Crobat, he hasn't got the Crobat yet. So I'm sitting here going on and on about all these different plays he can make with Crobat, even suggesting he does a huge Sycamore to hit the Crobat. Well, he just did a big Sycamore and he still hasn't hit the Crobat. And I don't believe he's even got something like an Ultra Ball in hand to get it. Not that I have any sympathy for Nitish in this game. Might I make it quite clear? I think he's on for a win here. And these Vespiquen style decks can really struggle against Lucario Bats and Manectric Bats. Now, I've talked on my podcast, PTCGRadio, about the fact that I came up with this deck, and I don't know if Tamao might have been working on this before me and got to it through a different way, but certainly myself and Joe Bernard, came up with this deck and made a good list, which is very different from Tamao's, which is why I think he may have come up with it on his own, and I think he even actually played it at a tournament before me and Joe did, so actually Tamao might have been the first one to come up with this deck. It's got very good matchups against Night March, because it's non-EX, and you've got 4 regular Yveltal to take out the Night Marchers, all with 1 hit for 1 energy. You've got really good matchup against Seismitoad Giratina and against any other non-EX decks. But against these EX decks that can hit, Houndoom is another pretty bad matchup, because they can just, from turn 1, just start whittling away at your little low HP basics. And it takes you a few turns through a combination of Bats and Vespiquen to start getting KOs. And you just can't afford it, to be honest, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I did beat a Houndoom in this tournament, but because I just went off like a rocket really early game and then used Vespiquen to run through some Houndooms. It was largely luck. Now, I did draw with a Lucario Bats, but there was just one game where I went first and got a better start, and that's what it comes down to. If Tamao gets a good start in these games, he may well win, but we've seen that in both games, Tamao has been unable to get a good start. Now, I've been talking about taking out the Milotic. Let's not forget, ladies and gentlemen, that another option here is that Nitish just pulls up a Shaman using Lysandre and gets the KO with one of his Lucario. Although his bad Lucario at the moment, and he's got the energy to retreat the Shaman. We saw Tamao just, drag the Shaman active, hoping to buy a turn to get something going. That was his only play at that stage. But it is a little bit desperation at this stage. If this was a game 1, I imagine Tamao would have gone, I can't win, and scooped by now. Oh, and he's not retreating it. That's an interesting little play. Because next turn, he can attach an energy and Sky return for the KO. Nitish isn't under any kind of worry this turn. If I remember correctly, Milotic's got a retreat cost of 2. But let's say Milotic had a retreat cost of 1. Tamao still can't just attach an energy and retreat it. He needs all his energy to attach to the Vespiquen. So this has not been a vintage game for Tamao's deck. Now, I suppose the background to this game is that I believe going into this game, now if I remember correctly, Tamao is sitting at 4-1 and Nitish is sitting at 3-1-1. Which means that the winner of this game will make top cut. The loser of this game will not make top cut. And if it ends in a draw, Tamao will make top cut. So in the earlier game, in game 1, you might have thought, could Tamao have scooped earlier, given him time to win the series? The answer is, with Tamao starting this game at 4-1, 4-1-1 wasn't guaranteed to cut, but Tamao's resistance was looking very, very good. So, it really was a situation where, there's no incentive here for Tamao to cut. If Tamao can win 1 out of 3 games, the series overall goes to a draw. Tamao finishes 4-1-1 and wins. There's the Lysandre. Now, he hasn't got the KO yet. I believe he's got a strong end. Now that's the KO on the Shaman, and that is a win for Nitish. Nitish makes top 8, and actually, in the next day or two, you can see Nitish's top 8 game. It's against me. I tried not to be on stream this tournament, but we'll talk about that next game. Thank you very much to Deborah for letting us record. Thank you to Tamao and Nitish for recording, and join us very soon with the top 8. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.